Hey guys, what's up? I decided after a year of being gone and now being back in Canada for a visit, I would share with you guys what my thoughts are on how things have changed, what hasn't changed, those kind of things. And one of the first things that I noticed, there isn't a whole lot of things that have changed just generally in being here and looking at the surface of things. The one thing I would say that I encountered myself on my way over here from Toronto to Winnipeg, the only thing that I noticed is people are not quite as polite. I don't know if that has something to do with me being used to South America and how genuine everyone is and such, but so me and my daughter ended up traveling most of our trip by ourselves, and for the last connection that we had over to Winnipeg, we were not seated together. There was, by the time we were booking that flight, there wasn't any seats that were next to each other. There was one in front of the other. That's the closest we could get. And her being 5 and always having kind of this anxiety as soon as she is not right beside mom when we are in public spaces, that really wasn't going to work very well. And so I decided to ask other passengers if they would be willing to switch spots with one of us so that we could sit next to each other. And something I found interesting, wasn't quite expecting, which I totally get. They have the right, if they chose their seat where they wanted to sit, they can deny it, but I guess I wasn't expecting it. I asked 2 ladies, first one that was already seated, if she would be willing to switch with myself so I could sit beside my daughter who was seated next to her. And she said she'd prefer to keep her seat, so she wasn't going to switch with me. Okay, figured there was going to be other people who were going to board the plane yet. Asked another lady, and she also said, I'd really prefer to keep my seat. There was then a person who was already on board who was traveling in a group of 3. She offered to switch spots, which was really kind, and I am very grateful for that. It's not that there is not still kind people around here. There definitely are. It just seems to be a little further and fewer in between. Now, just for reference, we are south of Winnipeg, which has always been known to be a more Christian conservative area, which is some of the biggest things that we have noticed in talking with family and friends that has changed around here. They're slowly starting to, even the churches, lose their willingness to help in the community. For instance, the private schools around here, to keep the cost a little lower for parents and make it still affordable, they do a lot of fundraisers. The churches have started telling these private schools that they are not willing to rent them their spaces more than once per year, which makes it harder for them to find enough spaces. They will give the excuse that it's too much wear and tear on their equipment, even though these are paid rentals, and it's not that they just come in and they use their space and not take care of it. It did not take very long after we had moved away from here that we started hearing from friends. There were books being put on the shelves of the public libraries that the left is really pushing. They contain revealing photos of children, and little kids can go and take these books off the shelves without any parental consent. And when the city council was being addressed on this issue and got a little bit of pushback, they really wanted to just walk around the topic and not address it and not do anything about it in fear of being called whatever the left would call them. This really shows how watered down everything is becoming here and not being resistant to all these things that are being pushed so heavily. There's still a smaller portion of the population here that is speaking out against things like this, but for the majority of the population, I would have to say that they're starting to fizzle out when it comes to standing up and resisting things like this and things that they believe in that shouldn't belong, and rather just quieting down and not fighting anymore. The last one I want to touch on is the economy. There are certain portions of the economy that are now doing better than what they were when we left, and this would happen to be transportation, particularly in grain, which is really great. And we can see that certain industries in the area are also doing quite well still, which is kind of interesting. The industrial areas are still growing. When it comes to real estate, there has been a shift, and this one is significantly noticeable. The area we're staying in is a new development, and when we left, there were 4 or 5 new houses being built here, and there has not a single one been built since then. If they are being built still, it's still ones that were already being built at that time. This is also starting to be noticeable when it comes to developers purchasing land and such. They are trying to really steer clear of single family homes and rather multi-family dwellings. So on the real estate front, things have really come to a standstill for the time being. Like I said, this area has always been a little more safe from what's going on in the rest of the country, but I'm sure there are a whole lot of ways that the rest of the country has changed in different areas, experiencing different things. And if you are in one of the other areas of the country, do let me know what has changed for you in the last year. I'd be quite interested in hearing about that.